Hey everyone, and welcome back. Now today we're going to be talking about Bittensor because while there's been a lot of hype and speculation and a lot of this stuff kind of circling around AI agents specifically, I want to talk about something that kind of sits at the bedrock of decentralized AI, at least in my opinion, and that is Bittensor, because essentially the platform and the infrastructure that they've built is kind of a really interesting kind of concept of essentially like a supply and demand type of push-pull model. They've got a lot of really different like consensus mechanisms, a lot of different things that I could see potentially pushing some really interesting like and unique innovations into the decentralized AI kind of infrastructure and paradigm, all that type of stuff. So anyway, let's go ahead, dive right in and take a look at kind of what we've been seeing lately. Obviously today, a pretty red day overall. We've seen a ton of volatility just kind of all over the place. We can see AI16Z still running, doing really quite well. I think it's up almost, it's up well over almost 200% in just the past week, well over 100%. It's really done a pretty crazy run, particularly over the past even just like 12 hours or so. I mean, it's been really interesting. And so obviously this one's continuing to run. This one is something that, like, you know, at this point in time, at least in my personal opinion, maybe not the best idea to jump into just because we've seen it run so crazy, but who knows? I mean, you know, if you jump in right now, I guess you can tell me that I was wrong when it hits 100 billion or something ridiculous. I don't think that's going to happen, but it could. You just never know. Anything can happen in crypto. That I have been around long enough to know that and have learned that the hard way several times. We can also see, kind of looking through the overall market, basically everything pulling back. We can see a couple greens here and there, but overall the market down, I would say probably an average about 5 to 6%. We can see ICP down about 4.5%, Jasmine about 5%. Fetch about 6%, Tau about 6% as well. We can see Helium down 12%. That's one of my favorites. It kind of hurts to see it down, but again, this is just kind of how the market moves. Down some days, up the others. Even if we go back, we are sitting at negative on the month now, so basically everything except a year negative. But overall, we are going to see some pretty impressive gains here on the year, even Bitcoin up over 100%. And then obviously, we have several smaller ones up many hundreds, some even thousands of percent. So I think things looking really good for the market overall, but we have started to see things kind of pull back a little bit from what we have been kind of expecting over the past several weeks, which is up only. And so we can see, looking at the Tau chart, really nice pump kind of through the November push, like kind of everything else did, but Tau kind of more than others has given back almost everything that it made in that November push. We can't even see a wick down, hitting below what we were seeing kind of prior to the November run up. So Tau's price definitely struggling, I would say, more than what we would have expected or has seen from basically almost every other crypto that we've talked about on the channel. So this is something where I think this is where we've seen Tau maybe kind of fall out of favor a little bit, maybe getting a little bit underappreciated just because of kind of the overall market. It's focused on AI agents, a lot more of like the flashy AI type of stuff, not necessarily some of this. I would consider Tau something more kind of like foundational, kind of like a infrastructure type of play, and those aren't always like the sexiest. They kind of need to rotate in as part of some of these crypto rotations that we see. But as the like decentralized AI narrative starts to take off, I do think this is something that we will see a rotation back into, just because people are always going to need places to have and obtain their data, right? I mean, if they're trying to train a model or things like that, they need good and reliable data. And as we're going to continue to go into here in a second, Tau has a really interesting model figured out for how that works. And so anyway, if you are interested in trading Tau, you can see I am using WEEX. That WEEX does have Tau available. I know that I've been talking about BTCC fairly frequently recently. I did check. BTCC does not actually have Tau listed currently. So if you are wanting to trade Tau specifically, I could suggest WEEX as one. I will put that link in the description below if you are wanting to get signed up. I will also add my BTCC link as well if you are looking to trade on there and get that 10% deposit bonus. But overall, like I said, they don't have the ability to trade Tau. So if that's what you're looking to trade specifically, I would suggest WEEX, and you'll also have that link in the description as well. But we can see price struggling pretty hard since what we saw even just in the previous run up. If we look at a lot of other charts, we're not going to see a retrace as dramatic as this, basically giving almost all the gains back. But anyway, moving on, I want to take a look at kind of AI coins, because what we can see, obviously, ICP we talk about a lot. They're the second right behind Near. We haven't really talked too much about Near on the channel, but Near is one that they're kind of trying to become the AI chain. I would kind of put them more in line with Bittensor. So I would say they're probably most similar. ICP we probably could push into that as well, just because they are trying to be more of an infrastructure play. Virtuals is definitely more of like an AI agent type of play, which is why we've seen it move so dramatically. Render, more of an infrastructure play, but that's more from compute, not necessarily the actual generation of like good quality AI data. This is more of like a infrastructure, like a physical infrastructure type of thing. It's more of DePIN, I guess I would say, rather than like decentralized AI, even though it is kind of under the AI umbrella. Artificial Superintelligence Alliance, this is one that I would say is kind of more of in like the virtuals realm. They do a lot with AI agents as well. Then obviously down we see more kind of fitting in some of these major buckets, you know, AI16Z, more AI agent, Akash, more DePIN, stuff like that. And so, but anyway, we're here to focus on Tau. We can see that they're actually the 6th largest AI coin, so pretty decent in size. Obviously, you know, we saw Tau run up something pretty impressive at the beginning of this year, so it's done really, really well. And so since we have been talking about AI a little bit more on this channel lately, I did just want to go over Tau a little bit more and talk about it. But also I did want to talk about a project specifically on Tau as well. The project's name is Woof.ai. They actually reached out to me probably 2 or 3 weeks ago. I've met with them in a couple of different calls up to this point. I've done a Twitter space with them, a lot of that type of stuff. Really interesting team, really cool team. They are doing a lot of cool stuff. I think the idea that they have is pretty novel for a couple of different reasons. The first one, and I think kind of the easiest one to kind of understand, is they're essentially trying to take dog bark data and try and essentially like figure out what the dog is feeling, right? So essentially, you know, if they're barking a certain way, or, you know, the certain pitch or in frequency, intensity, any of that type of stuff, they're essentially trying to like compile enough of this data together so that people, essentially dog owners, can like try and get a better insight into like what, you know, is their dog scared, upset, excited, anxious, nervous, whatever, which is really, really kind of an interesting idea. Obviously, there's a whole bunch of things that can be done with AI, but this is one that I think is a pretty unique and an idea that I haven't really seen before. But I also think it makes a ton of sense because, you know, at least where I am in the US and from a lot of what I've seen, like people really, really like their dogs, and they essentially almost treat them as like second kids, or like a, you know, maybe a different type of kid for those who aren't even having kids at all. And so this is something that where I think it could be like a pretty interesting idea that does actually find a pretty strong level of adoption, just because people who have dogs, there's a certain subset of them that are very, very, very into their dogs. And so I think something like this, I could totally imagine like them paying for, because I think they would want to know like, how can they help, you know, best help their dog, and a lot of that type of stuff. So I do think there is definitely like a market here. They also have this other thing that they're doing too, which is Jin, and it's kind of like this like middle layer between Tau, and we're going to go into Tau in a second of kind of how it works. But basically they have both like a proof of stake as well as a proof of work kind of a layer to them. So the proof of stake is the subnet level, and then you have the proof of work, which is you have the miners who are actually generating the AI data, and then you also have the validators who are essentially making sure that that data is good, and then they're essentially trying to like find a buyer for it, from what I understand. Again, we'll go into that a little bit more here in a second, but overall this kind of middleware of this Jin also seems to be something that's pretty interesting to me. This is kind of like a flow chart. Obviously there's a lot going on here, but essentially like they're trying to use this Jin as like essentially for like the data that their app provides. They can kind of help level out like the proof of stake and proof of work rewards to the people actually validating on their subnet, which I think could like raise earnings. That's one of the things that they're kind of really pushing for, is potentially like a novel way to innovate on the Bittensor system overall. And so not only do we have like an interesting like surface level idea of trying to like collect and gather dog bark information, use AI and ML training models, a lot of that type of stuff to try and like kind of infer what these dogs might be meaning or looking for, something like that. But also they have this like middleware type technology as well of this Jin. So I think there's kind of two things that are really, really interesting that they have going on here. And so anyway, I just want to talk about them a little bit kind of while we're going through Tau and Bittensor, just because, you know, like I said, I have been talking with them, I have been working with them. They did want to sponsor this video as well, just so we could both cover what Woof.ai is, how it works, a lot of that type of stuff, but then also go over Bittensor too, and kind of bring more awareness to the Bittensor subnet and the network and everything overall, because that's one of the things that I really liked about these guys, is they obviously have their own idea. They have this vision that they are trying to build, but they also are very committed to the overall like well-being of the Bittensor network, which I think is really, really cool. And so that's one thing that I want to talk about here. Also looking for Bittensor, essentially kind of the overall high level. So the best way that I found to explain kind of what what Bittensor is and how it works is in this couple like paragraph bit here. So we're just going to kind of read through this and then we can kind of explain what they're saying. I think it's pretty clear overall, but in case we need a little bit more clarification, we'll do that. Everything is decentralized. Digital commodities like compute, data, storage, predictions, and models are transformed into intelligence. When digital commodities are recast as intelligence, then new architectures are discovered, new commodities are produced, and surprisingly cheaper ways to achieve innovations being revealed, the possibilities turning out to be limitless. Tau, the decentralized currency, fuels the production of this intelligence in subnets. These intelligence-producing subnets are then innovatively connected in productive and profitable ways, feeding one intelligence into another. Entrepreneurs with skills and ideas will use Bittensor when they are deprived of investments from traditional sources of capital, and most important, any such entrepreneur can participate profitably and thrive in the Bittensor ecosystem. You can be a consumer of a subnet's digital commodity, or if you are a subject matter expert, for example, an ML practitioner, then be a subnet miner, produce the best predictions for your customers, and earn Tau. Or you can also be a subnet validator, find markets, enterprises, small businesses, application developers, or end users for these digital products, generate revenue, and earn Tau. Or you can just be a subnet owner and create fertile grounds for the growth of your subnet validators and subnet miners to earn Tau. So essentially they have like the overall Tau ecosystem, and then you have essentially like these little like niches, I guess you could call them, of different subnets where each subnets are doing different things. And then you have people within those subnets essentially both helping validate and like create AI ML models and types of things like that. And then you also have the people validating it, making sure that's right, and also finding an end user for that type of thing. So overall, it's a really, really interesting system with a super unique kind of push and pull between the generation, the usage, the validation, customer, producer, a lot of that type of stuff. So it's one of those things where like I haven't really seen anything super similar to Bittensor and how it works. A lot of how we've seen AI work is a little bit more, I guess, simplistic in terms of like AI does something and AI earns money for this, and then AI pays out like stakeholders. This is again more for like AI agents. And then at like an AI like L1 level, usually it's you have the actual like miners who are usually like mining the blocks. They don't necessarily care so much about the intelligence like generated within the blocks itself. It's just more of they're just mining blocks and or like, you know, staking blocks, whatever, and then they are essentially like being rewarded for doing that. There isn't this like interconnected push and pull within the community, which I think is very unique to Bittensor and I find really quite interesting. And so anyway, I just want to talk a little bit about kind of Bittensor overall today, discuss some of the things that we have seen with price. Given that it has pulled back so much, you know, we do need to kind of maybe look a little bit closer into this. Is this potentially a really good buying opportunity, or is maybe the Bittensor ecosystem starting to show a little bit of weakness, and we should be a little bit concerned about that? But overall, I mean, the originality of kind of the Bittensor network is something that I find very interesting, and I'm hoping that they can have success and continue to find builders and all that type of stuff, because I like these like new and novel and kind of like unique ways of kind of incentivizing people to essentially do productive work. And I think Bittensor's found something here that I think is kind of interesting. Obviously, it's super complex. It feels kind of like when I was first getting into ICP as well. It's just there's just so much going on. There's so much complexity to kind of what's going on and so much nuance. But it all seems like there's a really good reason for it, which is one of the things I find really cool and have liked so far. So anyway, hopefully you found the information in this video useful. If you did, please do give me a like and subscribe, because it really does help me out. Also, if you have any comments, questions, anything like that, just feel free to drop those in the comment section below. I do try to read and respond to all of those. So anyway, thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next video.